I have been kneeling in alien dirt for 41 years. Not metaphorically. Not in the way a man says he spent his life in service to something and means only that it was hard. I mean, I have been on my actual knees, in the actual red-brown soil of Carath-sel's eastern shelf, with my actual palms pressed flat to the ground, reading what the earth has to say. You learn to read soil the way you learn to read a face. Moisture content from the color and the give, root depth from the resistance, nitrogen saturation from the smell when you break the crust, a particular sweetness, or an absence of it that means you've got 4 days before the outer rows start to yellow. My father taught me the palm flat check. His father taught him. 3 generations of Tesseran men who came to carath-sel on the second colonial wave and planted themselves in the eastern shelf's red clay and never saw a reason to leave. There were 800 of us when we arrived. There are 400 now. The young ones leave for the stations, for the mining contracts, for anywhere that doesn't require 40 years of kneeling. I don't blame them. I stayed because I am constitutionally incapable of letting a field go to ruin. It is the one thing I know how to feel strongly about. The stone was already here when we arrived. That's the first thing you have to understand. It wasn't a ruin, or not what anyone recognized as one. No glyph work, no carved faces, just a dark basalt column, twice the height of a man, half buried at the northeast corner of the lower field, tagged by the colonial survey team as geological formation, low priority, non-obstructive. The survey team spent 6 hours on the eastern shelf. I have spent 41 years on it. The survey team's tags are not always worth the composite they're printed on. I named it the Waystone. Not officially. My wife thought it was eccentric. The survey office would have agreed. But there was something about the way it sat in the field. Not as if it had fallen there. Not as if the soil had pushed it up through geological pressure, but as if it had been placed. A column of intention in 300 hectares of my best clay loam. I planted around it, maintained a 2-meter margin, kept the encroaching thorn grass off it with a hand cutter, which was more care than I gave some of my outbuildings. 8 years ago, a specialist team from the Colonial Authority spent 4 days running instruments over it, ground-penetrating scan, acoustic resonance, spectral analysis. They told me it was 9,200 years old, give or take. They told me the basalt composition didn't match anything in the shelf's geological record, which meant it wasn't formed here. They told me their instruments couldn't determine its function or origin, and they logged it Category 3, present, inert, non-hazardous, and left. I went back to work. That's the other thing you have to understand. The Waystone had been here 9,200 years. It had been here through the first colonial survey, and the second, and 8 years of specialist instruments. It was not, as far as anyone could tell, doing anything. I am a farmer. I have work. The morning it spoke to me, I was checking the soil at the northeast corner. The lower field's outer rows had been running low on moisture, a slow drainage issue I'd been fighting for 2 seasons, and I'd come out in the gray pre-dawn to take readings before the day crew arrived. The Waystone was 15 meters away. I wasn't thinking about it. I knelt, pressed both palms flat, the way I always do. Fingers spread, the heels of my hands sinking slightly into the loosened crust. The ground answered. Not the soil. The ground. Something beneath the soil, beneath the substrate, far enough down that I couldn't have told you how far. A vibration that was not a vibration. That is the closest I can come to it. A resonance that moved up through the clay loam and the chalk substrate, and whatever bedrock sits beneath this shelf, and entered me through my palms and my knees and the column of my spine, and sat there, humming, waiting. I did not stand up. I am not sure I could have. The Waystone's surface changed. I had looked at that stone 10,000 times. I knew the precise shade of its basalt, a dark gray with a faint blue-green undertone that caught differently in morning light versus midday. I knew the texture, the slight roughness at mid-height, where some old force had stressed the surface. I knew the way moisture moved across it, the patterns of condensation on cold mornings. What I saw now was a seam. A hairline seam running the full height of the column, equatorial, perfectly centered, beginning to shed light the way a door sheds light. Not from within, but through. A pale gold, barely a color at all. The color of old paper held up to a window. The resonance changed pitch. It entered my jaw, my sternum, the bones of my wrists where they pressed into the soil. When it spoke, it did not speak in any language. It spoke in something before language, a structure that landed in me already translated, the way a dream arrives already understood. What it said was this: held the line, first shepherd. I knelt in the dark for a long time after that. Here is what I have assembled since, from what the Waystone has given me. Slowly, over the weeks that followed, the way a deep aquifer gives up water. Not all at once, never all at once, but reliably, if you know where to press. 9,000 years ago, the builders of the Waystone were done with their colony work on carath-sel. They had done what they came to do: engineered the Eastern Shelf's soil matrix, seeded the drainage systems, calibrated the nitrogen-cycling organisms in the clay. They were thorough people. They did not leave things unattended. The Waystone was their watchman. Not a guardian in the martial sense. Not a weapon, not a sentinel, not a sealed military asset waiting to be reactivated for war. A watchman. A slow, patient, 9,000-year presence, designed to monitor the health of the soil they had built, to watch for the chemical signatures that would signal the drainage failing, or the nitrogen cycle collapsing, or the deep aquifer drying, to wait for a custodian. The custodian had to carry the right frequency. Not a genetic sequence, not a blood type, a physical practice. The palm-flat soil press, both hands, fingers spread, weight forward on the knees. The specific mechanical resonance of a body that has done this motion 10,000 times until the joints and tendons have calibrated themselves to it. The builders seeded this practice into the first agricultural families of the Eastern Shelf and trusted the inheritance. My grandfather did not know what he was passing down. My father did not know. I did not know. 41 years ago, when I knelt in this soil for the first time and pressed my palms flat and felt nothing, of course. A young man's hands, still learning. 41 years of nothing. Until the morning the practice was complete, the calibration was finished, and the Waystone recognized the resonance it had been waiting for. I am 63 years old. I have calluses on my palms that are older than some of my equipment. I have spent more time on my knees in alien dirt than I have spent standing upright. I have no military record, no academic credentials, no particular distinction of any kind. The colonial authority knows my name as a consistent taxpayer and an occasional nuisance about drainage policy. The Waystone calls me First Shepherd. It means something more than the word. It means the one who carries the care of this place in their body, the one the builders trusted to still be here when the 9,000 years were finished. I am still trying to understand what that means in full, what it asks of me, whether there are other Waystones on other shelves, whether the builders left more than a watchman. The Waystone gives answers slowly, as I said, the way an aquifer gives water. What I know is this: the Eastern Shelf's drainage issue resolved itself 3 days after the Waystone spoke to me. The outer rows of the lower field are running clean for the first time in 2 seasons. The soil, which I have known as red-brown clay loam for 41 years, has begun producing at a depth I have never seen. Whatever the builders calibrated into this earth 9,000 years ago, it has been waiting for the first shepherd to close the circuit. I went out this morning in the pre-dawn gray and knelt at the northeast corner and pressed my palms flat, the way I always do. The ground answered, the way it does now. I am 63 years old, and I am constitutionally incapable of letting a field go to ruin. It turns out the builders knew exactly what they were looking for.